The goal of Data Transformers podcast is to accelerate digital transformation by bridging the gap between business outcomes and rapidly advancing technologies. And we aim to bridge this gap by focusing on data. I am Peggy Tsai, top 50 women in tech influencer, co-author of the AI book, and data governance expert.
I'm Ramesh Danta, an entrepreneur, a tech blogger, and AI enthusiast. Hello all, welcome to part 2 of our discussion with David Van Bruwaene, co-founder and CEO, Fairly AI, to focus on artificial intelligence governance. So maybe we take it from the beginning. Your education was in philosophy. How did you get into data science?
So I started philosophy because I wanted to be an artist and then a film director, and then I wanted to have something to say that I thought I could defend and was sensible and kind of understood the full complexities of human nature. That's what a high school student thinks, and that's kind of how I got into it. But I kept getting like really top marks in the logic classes. And I had not thought of myself as a technical person so much, but my family is full of computer scientists. I studied more logic as it went along because that was a great way to pop my average up, because you can just get 100% in everything because it's all like, it's not like an essay where someone's
2 + 2 is always 4.
Guaranteed a good mark. So when I got into grad school, I thought I'd either do cognitive science, psychology, like the philosophy of mind, or logic. And I chose logic and took a class at University of Waterloo in my master's on artificial intelligence, and it was pretty awesome because we programmed in Lisp, and that's just crazy recursive. I just like geeked out on it. I loved it. And we made neural networks, we made frame-based reasoning tools. And this is before anyone heard of neural networks in the popular.
I was gonna say, it probably wasn't a very popular course, or just probably wasn't that mainstream yet. Right.
It was popular with computer science students, but none of the philosophers could code, so I didn't take it. But I just learned to code because I don't know, I liked it. And I, for the final assignment, I trained a neural network to reason like a puppy does during toilet training, and so the different rooms of the house as well as the outside, the features, it would learn like which room would be and it did what I wanted. It was confused in the laundry room with the smells and stuff. It was fun. I just geeked out on it. And then when I got to Cornell, I did philosophy of language, and it was really top program for philosophy of language, where you are effectively trying to do systematic procedures to get from natural spoken human language to formal logical languages, and then capture meaning along the way. So how you define the word "the" was a whole course that I took on the word "the." It was pretty crazy, but like for good reason. It was a theory of descriptions and how you can uniquely identify one thing, as opposed to which there can be many. It's a kind of strange field, but it involves logic, mathematics, humanities, metaphysics, and linguistics. And I got into linguistics pretty heavily when I got over to Berkeley I did a 3-year exchange and met my wife in California, and that's why it was a 3-year exchange. I didn't want to come back, but we studied a lot of linguistics because they have a top program there. And then there was this thing called corpus linguistics, where instead of writing all the rules that you sit in your chair and say Bertrand Russell and Frege and all these people had these ways of reducing mathematics to logic, and we can do the same with language and write down all the rules and argue about Chomsky. They just took a statistical algorithm, threw it at a whole bunch of data, and it performed better than anything that us rules-based type people were coming up with. And I was like, well, I don't know if we need to understand what's going on, if we can just actually prove that we're doing making a mechanism that is more effective at doing natural language understanding type tasks. So from there, I just started coding and stopped writing my thesis.
I see.
Do you think that your background, like your really in-depth studies in linguistics and semantics, really do you think it's giving you an edge in terms of this area of AI, just because it's also very similar and it's also very logical as well? I'm just curious as to if that has made you successful because of your graduate studies.
It's made me successful at running an AI company and building out tech in a startup where you don't have resources and you just have to be creative and, you know, do what makes sense and learn things very quickly. Probably engineering skills are lacking. I shouldn't say this. I mean, I have a lot of deep understanding of mathematical structures, but I think people that do a traditional computer science degree are going to have some advantages there. But it's this new and interesting domain where the mathematical formulas and reams of code and technologies that are very obscure to a lot of people meet the humanities and the social sciences, and the divide between that has been very large for most people coming out of their educational backgrounds, that you either stream into one or the other. So I think in areas where we have to deal with meaning, we have to deal with the impacts of algorithms on human lives. It's been a very big advantage for me.
So David, I don't know if you missed something, but looks like you went from academia directly to starting a company. It's not that you worked somewhere, you got some experience, and then you started a company. Is that right?
So I was brought in as a consultant while I was teaching at the University of Waterloo, and it was a startup. So I didn't found Visor. I was a consultant 2 months in because they needed someone who could do this AI stuff.
I see.
Understand. And then I just got into it. I was teaching and spending my evenings coding cyberbullying detection algorithms, and that was a lot more fun than grading papers and answering questions about.
So, and then afterwards, what was the transition to CEO like? How did it happen?
So Visor was a company aimed at the consumer, where there's a product that you download and you connect your children's social accounts to it, and then it provides apparent alerts if and only, that's the idea, if and only if there's an issue, to protect the child's privacy, and machine learning is what determines that. The decision was made to not pursue the consumer route and to just be a pure tech company. And so I was offered the job of CEO, given that I was the one who had built and understood the technology itself. And that was quite a transition. That when you're coding, at least for me, you want to lock yourself up in a hole. And
yeah,
it's different than being a CEO, which is more of a manager, right, of the organization.
Yeah. It's the direct opposite. Yeah. Yeah, that was a kick in the butt. It was very, yeah, my habits had to change. I had so much to learn. Like I had to learn accounting and how to deal with boards, and I don't know. It was fun though. I mean, it's very exciting to build a technology, but for me, it's even more exciting to work with people and build a company that's building a technology.
That's true.
And I know with the recent passage of California, the CPRA, Consumer Privacy Rights Act, children's rights is actually one of the key tenets in that regulation, protecting the privacy of children.
Yeah.
So it sounded like Weiser was, years ahead of its time of, actually protecting children as, in social media today. So, I mean,
Yeah, we continue. So Safety Net bought us, and they're continuing the mission and doing a great job of it. UK-based company. So we're continuing, and technology improves every year.
So,
and
well, go ahead, Peggy.
I know. So, just want to connect that transition from Visor to what made you decide to, co-found Fairly AI. How did you make that decision? And in choosing, this was the project, this was the company that you wanted to form and create.
Well, I guess I just sat on a couch and didn't know what to do with my life. That's the real honest story. I just kind of thought about many different pet projects that I've had in the back of my head if I only had time. And at the time I was a board member, it's not like a lot of work all day long every day. So it gave me that space. And I also had my first child. And so I took a bit of time be with my wife and my son.
Mm-hmm.
And it was magical, and also just a lot of screaming and vomiting and just sitting here on my couch.
Changing diapers, things.
Yeah. What am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
But I made a lot of lists. I did a lot of Googling and read a lot of papers and talked to a lot of people, and it kind of converged on my biggest passion is bringing the benefits of artificial intelligence to people and doing it responsibly. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that's right field. Like the explainable AI is other thing, the responsible AI other thing. I mean, these are the hot markets in terms of unexplored areas. So one of the things that we are very curious about people is what drives them. Like, who are their influencers? Who are the mentors? What has been your journey? Were there purely internal influencers or external influencers? Of course, the kid and family, of course, influences your decisions as well.
I went to a conference and met a lot of very passionate people on ethics and AI. And I don't think that there's any singular figure in the field. Professor Floridi out of Oxford had done a whole lot of work on responsible AI that I was regularly reviewing his and the work that came out of his team. And there's, I mean, it's a probably terrible movie, but I, Robot with Will Smith, and then
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ideas. I really like the Terminator. I mean, there's things.
It's your second time you quoted the Terminator.
I don't know. That's like it's not my favorite movie, but the appeal of technology it's huge, but the risk as well. And I think there are the people involved in the community, but also I just was up close and personal with a lot of social media data, and I had people that were labeling it, and it was sometimes traumatic to see all of the horrible things that people are saying, and to think about automating the processing of this information, of selecting things to be even what comes at the top of your Facebook feed and why. I mean, seeing the impact on people, I think, is really what inspired me to do something.
Sorry to interjecting, but recently Netflix had a movie that was a huge hit, and we watched it. The social, I forget, is it social media or something like that, right?
I don't think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it brings out the aspects that you're talking about. Peggy, I don't know if you remember, if you know the movie that I'm talking about.
I do, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
so.
we have seen it. It's a social giants in terms of which feed comes up, how. The three forces, right? One is a monetization force, one is the engagement force, and one is just a pure numbers game. All of those three things working together to bring up. It's an interesting thing that you bring out there, David.
We're in a place where the elections are being decided by social media. If you are trying. If you're a technologist who just loves innovation and what comes next, and also care about major impacts on the world, this is an incredible place to be in the history of time, where there's so much opportunity and so much risk. I think the cool engineering and pulling rabbits out of the hat as a mathematician or something, those days are less. I mean, they're maybe not behind us, but what's more exciting is actually grappling with human issues and merging the technology and the human experience. That's where the excitement is for me.
That's great, David. And I know we only have a few more minutes left to our podcast. So one final question for you, David, is, looking towards the future, 2021, what are you most either excited about or looking forward to that's really going to impact the work that you do?
I think we're going to see legislation come out of Europe. The World Economic Forum has a publication that really outlines a legislative approach that they're expecting the EU to take. We're going to see potentially some legislation come through the United States. So there was the Algorithmic Accountability Act that was, I believe, in the Senate about a year or two ago, and it didn't go anywhere. But I think public opinion is evolving, and there is quite possibly bipartisan support for some amount of algorithmic accountability. And we'll see the impacts of the propositions that came through in California and how they affect the rest of the country. I think it's rapidly changing, where people are moving from not expecting any kind of regulatory oversight to expecting and preparing for it over the next year.
So on that note, actually, it's the adjoining question to that is, on the technology side, you're right, David, it's exciting, right? I mean, you delving into its foundation and the base level you are, and then it's only so much to do. But on the enormity of the task at hand, things that you mentioned, the data, digging through the data, it makes you cry. It's like what kinds of biases are there. Does it seem like it's almost impossible to deal with these issues, and they will continue to be there, and there is a negative side to, do you think of those things as you're digging into these things?
Yeah, but it's not binary. That's what gives me comfort. You can improve and constantly improve. And I mean, I come from philosophy where no one answers any questions in thousands of years, but it's not like there's no point. We have better understanding. We have better systems. I mean, humans are not in a perfect social political situation at any time in history, but either are humans working together to try to make things better, aspirational, and that's when society thrives, or not. And I think just the act of trying on its own makes for better technology and makes for a better world around that technology.
Wow, what a positive note to end.
Yes,
Good.
thank you so much, David. I think we all learned a lot about your company and your journey to responsible and fair AI. So thank you so much again for your time today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I mean, it was very delightful conversation. So we dug a lot deep into many aspects here. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard today and would like to hear more, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite player like iTunes and Spotify. And please do rate our podcast. Also, please go to our website, www.datatransformerspodcast.com, for more episodes, blogs, and information on our speakers. Thank you.